Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast sponsored by Support Now. Today, I am so excited to have a wonderful conversation with an incredible mom who's advocating for her daughter with a rare disease, and we'll be learning all about her experience, both supporting her daughter as a caregiver, as well as learning more around what support means to her. So, Amber Conn, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
So, Amber, I'd love for you to start by sharing, honestly, just a little bit more about your family and your journey.
So I have a 10-year-old daughter who has Alexander disease. And then my husband and I also have a 2-year-old son. So we are very busy between appointments and therapies and things for our daughter. And then, my toddler son is full of energy these days. So
No let up, no let up. Um, so tell me, Amber, and tell everybody, when did you receive the diagnosis? When did you know that your journey in parenthood would look a little different?
My daughter was diagnosed in 2015 with Alexander disease. She was 2 months shy of 2 years old, so about the age that my son is now. We started noticing tremors, and when she'd crawl, she'd fall and hit her face on the floor because her hands would be shaking. She started losing skills. She wasn't talking much. She wasn't really walking or standing on her own. So there were signs here and there, and of course, as a new parent, I was in denial. My mother-in-law kept telling me, "You need to have her screened," and I reluctantly gave in, and she was right. So, it was very different. I am one that, like, when we got the diagnosis, I hit the ground running and searched for any Facebook groups I could find, anyone else who had this diagnosis, because I didn't spend time in the grief. I just knew that we had to move forward and keep doing what we could do because we were told she had 3 to 5 years to live. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, that's not much time. What can we do to prolong this? What can we do to help her any way we can?
And it seems like you have, right? 10 years old. So,
Yes.
for those that aren't familiar with Alexander's disease, tell us a little bit more about the diagnosis.
So, Alexander disease is a neurodegenerative disease. It affects the myelin sheath in the brain, which protects all your nerve endings. The myelin sheath deteriorates over time, and so that it causes a lot of other deterioration throughout the body. The white matter in the brain becomes less and less, and there's also like the folds in your brain. With my daughter with Alexander disease, it collects the fluid, it builds up, so it causes just a lot of neurological issues and a lot of processing issues. Kids with Alexander disease a lot of times have trouble walking, talking, typically end up having seizures and can't swallow, lose the ability to swallow. So a lot of them have, my daughter included, have like a G tube and get nutrition that way. So my daughter's lost a lot of skills over the 10 years that she's been with us, but her personality has remained.
Yeah. So, Amber, tell us a little bit more about, you talked about kind of like powering through when you first got the diagnosis, trying to find community, seeking answers, and trying to you know, extend life and provide, it sounds like just the highest quality of life possible. And I'm so curious to hear you kind of talk about like your emotions when as you started to realize this was your new normal, kind of how you felt and how you supported yourself, frankly, through what was clearly a very life-changing moment for your family.
I probably went about it the wrong way. I suppressed a lot of the emotions. To me, distraction was a way to kind of cope, I guess. It was my coping mechanism was just to dive into the research, to the groups on Facebook, to connecting with other families like us. And that really kind of molded and helped shape me into the advocate I am today for her. Talking with other families. There's one in particular that our girls had the same genetic mutation of Alexander disease because there are many. And even within the mutations, there's a lot of varying degrees of degeneration. So some can still walk and talk, and you probably wouldn't realize that they have a disease if you didn't ask. And then others, like my daughter and this friend of mine that has the same mutation, they're both in wheelchairs and can't walk, can't really talk, don't eat by mouth. So it's very different. I was a teacher when I had her, and so, like, having a child with a disability has molded me to be a better teacher, and then, being a teacher has made me a better advocate for my daughter because I can see it from both sides.
I would imagine for those that love you, friends and family members, when they first found out the news, I'm sure it was pretty hard to talk about because you were in a state where you just wanted to be heads down, focused on finding answers. And how did your community show up, and kind of how did you invite them in, if or did you or could you at that time? And by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with how you handled it. I think this is actually a really beautiful example of how everybody responds to these things differently. And I think it's super important that if someone finds themselves in a similar situation, to know that it's okay if your first instinct isn't to slow down. If your instincts to speed up, that's okay, that's valid too. So I want you to know that as well. Like, I don't judge, certainly, by hearing you say, you know, "I'm looking for answers," like, that's not a bad thing, that's just how you responded, that's natural.
Yeah. And then last year she was in the hospital with and had to get a trach. She was the sickest I've ever seen her. And that was the first time in our whole journey that I actually allowed myself to break down and cry and just it was the first time that I really wrapped my head around what this meant for us and for her in the long run. And it was very therapeutic to allow myself to feel those feelings after chugging along so fast and never looking back to just sitting still in those feelings and realizing what we've gone through, how far we've come, and just what it means for our family.
So, I guess at any point in time for your friends and family, how were they showing up for you? Were they allowed in, or were you taking the approach of "We got this, we don't need anything"? I'm so curious to know kind of what that response has looked like along the way.
It was hard at first for everyone to wrap their head around. I will never forget the moment I found out. We were on our way to my cousin's wedding, actually, just my daughter and I, and I got the call from the doctor. And as soon as we arrived, my mom was there waiting for us, and I was just crying, just tears rolling. And Jordan sitting in the back seat, 2 years old. She's like, "What is going on?" I told my mom, and so, then she told my dad, and so we were the first ones to really know about it. And walking into that wedding, knowing that my friends and family were there to celebrate my cousin, I had to like push it down. I had to, not share it because I didn't want to, I knew that they would be there for us. It's not that I didn't think that they'd be there, but I didn't want to overshadow the wedding and the celebration that was to happen. It was very hard because I was in a place where I was very upset, but I had to kind of rein it in at that moment. I shared it with a few people because they could tell that I was upset. They gave us big hugs and just really lifted us up that night, and we really hindsight, I'm glad we found out when we did because we were surrounded by family and friends who loved us, who love, our daughter dearly. And so, finding that out in such a vulnerable time and being surrounded by family who support and care for us, it really helped me to pivot forward. And I've organized several 5Ks. We did one like in the spring right after we found out she was diagnosed. And I mean, it was pouring down rain, pouring. We had to pause it because there was lightning. So we had to start late. And I mean, it was so wet that my phone got wet in my pocket. I had to put it in rice. There were so many people there. It was crazy. I mean, they showed up. They ran the 5K in the pouring down rain. It was one of those moments that, like, I'll never forget. It's so funny looking back and seeing how soaked and drenched everyone was, but everyone showed up and they were there, and it's a fun story. We like to laugh about it now, you know? So, we were lifted up big time. And last year, they friends held a big fundraiser too for us, and everyone came out, my coworkers, family, friends. We've really been supported a lot along this journey, and so I'm very thankful for that.
Amber, at any point in time, have you had that "why me, why us" moment?
Um, I think last year, like I said, this time when my daughter was in the ICU for a month, I think that that's really when it hit me. And I didn't really feel sorry for myself in that way, but I just was like, I started feeling that anger that I hadn't been feeling about our situation and everything that my daughter's gone through. And I did holler out a few times, why, why are we doing this? But I never stay in it long because I just have always had that let's go mentality. I don't like to feel sorry for myself. I like to I'm a cup is half full kind of girl. I sat in it for a little while and then just kept moving forward. And I feel like the sadness and the depression that I felt at that time was more so like it was just compounded stress and trauma, medical trauma over the years. So I haven't really asked myself why us very much.
For Jordan, what are the things that fill her up? What are the ways that you know make her feel good and make her feel supported?
She has a huge personality. So she loves anyone who can match her sass. So some of her favorite people are ones that will play fight with her, or she likes when people act mean and grumpy. She thinks it's hilarious. Her therapists are wonderful because they're all the time giving her a hard time because she loves to give others a hard time. She likes to keep people on their toes, and that's really, what gives her the most joy is just that sarcasm and playfulness. It's who she is, and it's who she's always been. And she just loves when people dish it back out.
What's the relationship like between her and her sibling?
It was rocky at first. She was like, "Oh, baby." She was excited, and then she was like, "Oh, he's staying. Okay." Um, now that he's gotten older, he loves t like, it is amazing to watch, because not only are they, boy and girl, so they're very different personality-wise in that regard. He is much more energy and, wow, just so much spunk. But, he loves to help, and he at a year old was wanting to help with her breathing treatments, and he always wants to sit with her in the bed. They love to watch movies together. When we're in the hospital, he gets upset, he'll go straight to her room and expect her to
Aw.
be there, and he'll wanna sit in her bed even if we're not there because he feels close to her. And so he loves her so much. He's getting to the age now where he likes to pester her, and so she will dish it right back. But they get along really well, and I feel like they are meeting each other's sass for sure. But they he loves to help. He's always in there wanting to help me get her medicine ready and anything he can to just be part of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet that he is able to kinda step up and it sounds like kind of unfazed by her and maybe not as impressed as others might be from the outside, where this is his sister, this is just who he gets to play with, which is, I think, so healthy for her and for him, right?
Yeah. She's got a lot of cool equipment, so he likes to sit in
No,
her
all the
wheelchair when she's
gadgets.
not in it, and yes.
So, one of the things I think that's so hard that I've learned from moms that have kiddos with a rare disease is that most people don't know how to interact with someone that doesn't look like them or that might have wires or equipment that they've never seen before. What's your advice to someone maybe who's maybe another 10-year-old that isn't sure what to do, how to talk? Like, what makes you smile? Like, what interactions make you feel good? Because I think it's so important to have an honest conversation around what is like truly being what does inclusive truly look like in a situation like this?
She is homebound right now. She's in middle school. It's her first year. And I was a little nervous about middle school. It's very different than elementary. It's a whole new staff that we don't know and haven't built a relationship with. But fortunately, her gen ed teacher is amazing and has really gone above and beyond to include her in the class. She gets invited to come to the classroom once a week, and so she has like her name is on her table, even if like she has a spot in the room, even if she's not there every day. And the kids know that that's her spot. And I've heard from other parents and from the teacher, like the kids talk about her when she's not there. Like, when is Jordan coming?
Mm,
Is she, how is she doing? And they'll get excited when she comes in. They'll say, Jordan's coming today, and her teacher talks about her and shares about her even though she's not there. And so when we come in, a lot of the kids like to come up to her, and they get to play games and things when she's there. So they love when she comes because then they don't have to do homework. But so a lot of kids will come up and wanna play games with her, and really there's a few that are very sweet that treat her just like any other 10-year-old. They're not fazed by her trach and all her equipment, and they've asked a lot of questions, and when I like to come in to the classroom at least once a year, whether it be on Rare Disease Day or Leukodystrophy Awareness Month, one day out of there, and I talk to the kids. I usually bring a book to read about equipment, and we talk about it. And I'm very open with, please ask any questions you want, and so they are free to ask whatever they want. Sometimes they'll say, I hope this doesn't sound bad, and I'll say, no question is
mhm.
stupid, no question is bad. And so I try to really make it easy for them to approach us and just give them all the information, in a non-judgmental way. I love when people just walk up and say, "Tell why is she in a wheelchair?" Or, "What's that thing on her neck?" And so and it's very they're very innocent questions typically. What I don't like is when the parents try to shush them because they're embarrassed. Like, I don't want the kids I don't want them to feel embarrassed, because including her is asking questions, is learning about her equipment and what makes her unique.
Leading with the natural curiosity it's like all you can ask for. It's not a as it's called rare disease for a reason. It's not something you see every day, so it's natural to want to learn. They're certainly not teaching you something you don't know, that your daughter is in a wheelchair and that she has these pieces of equipment, so you might as well lean in to understand versus pretend like it's not there. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Having been on the journey you've been on, how have you supported people differently, now that you know what it's like to be kind of on the receiving end? So you know what it's like to receive support now. How do you give support? And how has this experience shaped you?
So I was a teacher, before I left my job in January, because we couldn't find nursing. So having being on this rare journey made me a better teacher, helped me to advocate better. I connected with my families in a way that I probably couldn't have had I not been on this journey. I like to empower others to be better advocates, because it is daunting to be an advocate. It is something that is not innate typically. You learn to be a better advocate by being thrust into this world, because you have to in order to get anything done for your kid. And so, like, I like to support people in that way of, just being there for them, letting them know that this is hard and it sucks sometimes because we hear all the time from people who don't understand, "Oh, just pray about it," or, "Oh, it'll get better," and they don't know what to say. And I understand it's just because they don't know. But sometimes we just want someone to sit with us and let us feel the way we're feeling, the negative thoughts. We don't want anyone to fix it. And so I just try to show up for people in that way because I know that's what's helped me the most is just having people listen and sit in my feelings with me and not try to fix something.
Yeah. I think that's such great advice to end on. It's don't be so quick to try to move past what someone might be feeling. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just let them sit in what they actually feel. And I think that's really beautiful advice for pretty much any situation, but particularly one that you've gracefully handled so well. For people that want to follow your story and learn from your experience, what are some of the ways they can find you?
So I have a page on Facebook for Jordan. It's called Jordan's Beautiful Life, and that is just all updates on her and what she's up to. I don't update as frequently because we're just all the time going, and I don't have the energy to update every single thing. But you can follow there. You can also follow me on Musings of a Medical Mom on Facebook and Instagram. And that's more of like from my perspective as a mom and a caregiver. So those are the two ways to connect.
And last thing before we wrap here, Amber, we had the opportunity to meet about a week ago, and I think that the way you've articulated your journey is so important. It's so special, and it's so mission aligned with what we feel here at Support Now, and really giving space for communities to show up in all the ways that matter. And you've touched on a good amount of those today. It's not just about raising money. Sometimes it's showing up in the middle of a thunderstorm and just being there for a family when they need it most. And sometimes it's being a listening ear. So, your story, Jordan's story, is so representative of what I feel so strongly about, which is this idea that we as communities can serve and bless in all the ways that matter. And as long as we create really a vehicle for all those ways to show up, we can really lift each other up, and create a world that isn't so afraid of the hard things in life or the tough things in life, or just because you don't understand doesn't mean you can't do something. So thank you for everything that you've done and being vulnerable and transparent with your community, both on Instagram and on Facebook. And I'm just so delighted to have met you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being creating support now and helping families like us because we need that support. So
Thank you.